Hi, and thanks for tuning in. Welcome to ImagingNation, a podcast brought to you by BIMI, the Biomedical Engineering and Imaging Institute here at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai in New York City. Today we wanted to talk a little bit about the experience and impact of COVID, how it's impacted our department, and specifically what our department in collaborations with other groups at Mount Sinai have done in order to push research forward and try to make the best of this card that we were dealt, which has really left us all, quite a bit concerned and uncertain towards the future. But that really has sparked some incredible creativity and some incredible new collaborations here at Mount Sinai and across the scientific world as a whole. And so, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. My name is Jazz Munitz, and I'm an associate researcher in the nanomedicine lab under Dr. Willem Mulder, and also work for BIMI as a manager of preclinical nuclear imaging here. So today I have two very special guests. So the first that I'd like to introduce is Dr. Zahi Fayyad, who is the director of the Biomedical Engineering and Imaging Institute here at BIMI. So hello, Zahi. How you doing?
Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for hosting this very important podcast.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for taking the time to come along. So, and our second guest is Dr. Robert Hurton, who is the assistant professor of medicine in gastroenterology. Hey, Rob, how's it going?
Hi, Jazz. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we know that the big exciting thing, or we don't know yet, but what we're going to be discussing today is the very exciting Warrior Watch project that's going on here. But at first, I'd really like to turn it over to you guys and hear a little bit about how the experience with COVID and how the city's current and past states have really impacted and shifted your lives in research. So maybe Zahi, would you like to start first?
Yeah, I think Rob is going to have a much more colorful picture to talk about since he was in the front line. In my case, as you know, Jazz, we stopped all activities, in March, middle of March, during the lockdown. But we really redeployed all our activities to COVID-related research, and at the same time, while trying to maintain some peripheral activities to the Institute, working from home and deploying people in these locations. So obviously life has been extremely disrupted, but it created opportunities, as we will talk about today with the Warrior Watch project.
Absolutely. And Rob, love to hear some more. You sound like you're the man with the knowledge and the experience here.
It was really, as we've all experienced, it was a once in a generation or multi-generational and still is public health crisis. And even now as COVID is continuing to rise throughout the country and in the world, in New York City, especially in the last few months, we were really at the epicenter for the United States with relating to COVID infections and seeing significant strains on the health system that went really far beyond just, the number of people that were infected. It was such a short period of time that it really strained all aspects of healthcare, especially in this area, in the metropolitan area.
Absolutely. It really does feel like this is the first, not necessarily meaningful, but the first time that our very modern, the last maybe 10 years, all of the scientific and medical developments that have come up has really been put to the test. And I think it's maybe revealed some places in the scaffolding where there may be some cracks that we need to fix, but it's also shown a lot of strength and leadership, and I really think that we've handled this in the best way that we know how. So yeah, that's great. So maybe we should turn it over a little bit to the Warrior Watch project and specifically how you guys were inspired to this and what the goals of the study are. Tell us all a little bit more about it.
And, I don't know if you want to start with the MSCIC and really showing how we come together with that first.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to also maybe make a little saying that I read recently, Warren Buffett talking about difficult times and discovering, opportunities or finding, as you said, Jazz, cracks in the wall. He said it's only when the tide is low you realize who's been swimming naked. So no, I mean, what I took from that is what he's saying is, yes, during these difficult times, or when you have, inflection points as we are experiencing today, it's very important to look at what is happening and learn from there to try to do basically better, right? Instead of being caught, naked when the tide is low. But yeah, going now to the serious matter, which is the Mount Sinai COVID Informatics Center. So it's really a group of us at Mount Sinai coming in from different disciplines. Some of us have not met before, like Rob, for example. I've never met Rob before. Came together, pursuing similar ideas and saying to each other, why don't we put together a group of people, redeploy our effort, and try to pursue what a lot of us wanted to do or have been trying to do, is able to aggregate data and information under one single, basically, roof. As you know, data is being collected at the medical center in multiple ways, but rarely data is being aggregated and put together as a resource to try to better understand the disease that we are looking at. We in radiology generate millions of studies a year with imaging from MRI, CTs, chest X-rays, etc. But in general, in radiology, we're looking at just the images, interacting with our colleagues in medicine to try to understand, give them information about the disease, but never we are looking at all the data and all together to try to come up with ways to uncover either the disease itself, to better understand it, or to uncover things that has not been uncovered before. So this really came about in this fashion, working with Girish, Alex Charney, and many others, coming in from data science, coming in from genetics, coming in from psychiatry, and people like Rob, trying to put together interesting projects with common interests. So I'll hand it to Rob now, and then I'll talk a little bit, after that about, why we decided to do the Warrior Watch project.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, is the idea, as you're alluding to, is all the cracks in our system that it's sort of uncovered and the ways that it's being strained and perhaps not streamlined. But I think it's also uncovered a lot of good in our system, which I hadn't previously realized, which Zahi was alluding to, and the fact that when there is a true public health emergency like this unfolding, that people are coming together far outside of their specialties and their usual comfort zones to kind of form teams to try to address this in a way that, 6 months ago, you would never have even imagined. We didn't even meet until this sort of happened. We started working on this. Would I be thinking I'm a gastroenterologist? He's in imaging, and how would these kind of groups come together? You wouldn't have expected it. And I think it's been very heartening in that way to see people sort of putting a lot of things on the egos, other projects, other things that are going on the back burner, and saying we have a mission we really need to tackle together as a team. And it's the only way we're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, it really does feel like through our resilience, we've become turbocharged. It's having this massive incentivization on a global scale that I think has really just lit a fire under so many of the researchers and scientists. Not that they weren't always working hard, but it's revitalized. I really think that there's going to be a large scale scientific and just renaissance that's really coming out of this time. I think there also is really something about these collaborations have come up because we've all been pushed towards speaking and collaborating through these really peripheral means, these virtual ways of speaking and communicating. So because of that, you rely a lot less on just speaking to the people that you typically see in your day-to-day, finding all these new connections. So it's wonderful to see that's something so impactful as the COVID Center, as well as the Warrior Watch, has really come out of this time of crisis. So yeah, all right, cool.
Jaz, let me add maybe one thing that's interesting. So in this project or this center, which is the Informatics Center, we're lucky that this is a research that can be conducted, in a sense, in the cloud. So you don't have to be physically, you don't need resources in capital or in terms of being there in the brick and mortar. So that's really one advantage, or why we were able to do things quickly and implement these or put these projects together. The other aspect, as you were saying, that yes, things have moved really fast because there is an urgency, etc. I think also what's encouraging to us is that we've been thinking about these ideas. We've been thinking about data aggregation and collaboration, and we've been doing it. China actually has been a pretty good place in the field of data science and informatics, and we'll talk about the detail soon. But what I found really refreshing is that now suddenly, whatever we put on the table or whatever the thing that we wanted to implement, suddenly they're being implemented in a much faster way. Not that because people are working harder, they've been always working hard, but I think things have facilitated, windows, your doors opened up. And I think, it came really from our leadership. I have to give credit to our leadership.
Absolutely.
At Mount Sinai, Dean Charney, David Rich from the hospitals, and others in leadership that really helped us and realize that this is something that needs to be done, and it's something that needs to be done quickly. And that's really what drove us, made us more and more excited to see these doors open.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I really think that Sinai leadership has done a fantastic job here. I mean, it's like it was very streamlined chain of command, I would say, that happened, especially within BIMI, but obviously it all comes from above as well. But yeah, I mean, it is quite exciting because we're now, as BIMI, we're opening back up and we're able to communicate to our patients, our clinical subjects who want to come in for scans and studies that with 100% confidence that we are really presenting a safe environment for you. We have all of the necessary precautions taken in place. It really is great. It's it's the best kind of bureaucracy. Absolutely. So should we jump in a little bit more into the Warrior Watch and hear what that's all about?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So great.
So maybe I'll start a little bit. I mean, I've had an interest in the aspect of evaluating external stressors on the body. As you know, Jazz, we have a program project studying post-traumatic stress disorders, the effect of chronic stress on the brain, but also how does it affect also the immune system and the cardiovascular system. So this has been something is already in place and of interest to a lot of us at BIMI and collaborators. So that's point number one. Point number two, I also have been very interested and intrigued by using new technology, such as wearable devices, to study or to the effect of these stressors on the body. Our program project did not have wearables a part of it, but just before COVID, at the beginning of the year, we started to think about how we could adopt some of the wearables from a different project to try to use it in the context of PTSD. So we've applied for IRB approval for this project, and then COVID did hit, and this is where I met Rob, who has similar interests, and Rob will continue the story.
Yeah, so very similar to as Zahi was mentioning, I had previously also I'm a gastroenterologist, particularly working in the field of inflammatory bowel disease, so an inflammatory condition that affects the GI tract. And one thing we've been particularly interested in over the last several years is the impact of stress on this condition. Patients are always saying it's worsening their disease and their symptoms. So we had started trying to look at this much more carefully, using wearable devices to try to predict or see if we could determine the disease course prior to the development of symptoms or inflammation. And we've been working already with a number of the other people at Mount Sinai, looking at this idea of using wearables to kind of address these questions. And this is sort of where this early idea of applying this to COVID came about when this crisis hit. And very early on, through the groups as Zahi was alluding to, where all of us were already working on some of these areas, we sort of coalesced and came together to try to apply this technology, which offers a lot of novel means to kind of answer questions to COVID itself. And that's where we all came together. Now, maybe everything's a blur, but like 3 months ago or so, 3 to 4 months ago when this all started.
Yeah.
So really, I would say the field was, fairly primed with this group, the Mount Sinai Informatics Center. People like Rob, who had a previous experience with these wearables and different diseases. But also, why we did it? Why not others? I think because this group had that past experience and is able to pivot quickly and is able to adopt these wearables through that project that we put on the table. And I think that's really one of the reasons why we have been successful in implementing this project.
Absolutely. Well, because just speaking about the Informatics Center and the concept right now of stepping back and doing this data-driven analysis of whether it be all of the scans that we have or whether you're a normal researcher and just have acquired unbelievable number of whatever it may be, need to take some time to analyze. It seems like wearables really are that untapped gold mine of data that's out there to such a high extent that we don't really know quite what to do with it. So I guess the question I'd pose to you guys is why wearables, why the Apple Watch, and what are the data points? What's the behavioral or quantification info that you guys are hoping to derive? Where can that stuff lead? What discoveries?
So I'll go with why wearables. So obviously, you would like to collect as much information from the patient in real time when possible. It's not something that is done in medicine, right? We don't collect in real time information on patients. Patients come to the clinic. They come to a radiology department to undergo a scan, but it's really at one time point over that course of the disease. It's really not that perfect, right? So that's point number one. In terms, so you do want to be able to measure things, what's happening in a real time fashion in the patient. This way, it gives you opportunity to detect things that you are maybe covering much before they become a real problem, right? When you show up to the clinic. Point number two, with COVID, we also realized that this point of care methodology, telemedicine, which you can see your doctor through the Zoom without you going to the clinic. So delivering care in a different way, but also not only delivering care, but at the same time measuring things in difficult situations. So wouldn't it be great, to have these measure on these patients? That you could detect COVID before you get an RT-PCR, nose swab, right? So that really is the hypothesis on the table, and I'm more and more convinced. And actually, we are, thinking, for even BIMI, which is now an engineering institute, to try to bring this point of care methodology with a lot of engineering, work and novelty that needs to be brought. I think a lot of medicine is going to rely on these points of care in the future. So maybe Rob, you can take it from there.
Yeah, really, really well put. And I agree completely. As a clinician, so I'm seeing my patients in the office, and you say you see them 2, maybe 3 times a year for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. So you're imagining you're spending an hour with a person in the course of a year, and there's so much happening in between those visits that exactly as Zahi mentioned, that we, especially with the advancement of technology, digital technology, we have the ability to sort of get a better handle on diseases in between these visits to really manage it better and to kind of stave off these flares or worsenings of chronic disease in particular, maybe when things are just getting started and it's easier to control it. And I think you could, in the long run, hopefully improve outcomes even beyond COVID as a whole, just in disease in general by monitoring better. So yeah, I completely agree.
Absolutely, yeah. And I really think that is, it really is quite great because, so I work in Professor Mulder's nanomedicine lab, and we're working largely with immunotherapeutics in order to try to upregulate and downregulate immunoresponses during times of massive inflammation or during times when you hope to significantly reduce inflammation. So we've transitioned into a COVID model and COVID research, and we're continuing along with that as well. But I really think that you guys have the finger on the pulse, and it really feels that way because the more and more that we learn about the immune system and specific responses, especially in the context of COVID and developing ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, having prior cardiovascular or autoinflammatory or any of these kinds of diseases really can prime the body to have a different kind of response to COVID, which as we're going through this data analysis, as the information comes in from the Warrior Watch project and the different research that we're doing right now in response to the COVID crisis, I really do think that we're also going to strengthen our understanding of the connections between these diseases and different maladies. So it's really so wonderful you guys are getting this kind of data collection on the wrists of so many patients. But if my understanding is correctly, it's not just about the patients, right? The Warrior aspect is not just the strength of the patients, but it's also the strength of the healthcare workers and the frontline doctors. So could you speak a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, so this really kind of started this idea of applying the concepts we've been talking about to COVID early on in the pandemic when it was hitting New York City. And the healthcare system in New York City at the time was very strained. And myself, I'm a gastroenterologist, and I spent a few months actually just not even doing gastroenterology for a period of time and shifting completely to COVID-based patient care in the hospital. And what I saw and what my colleagues were telling me is really the strain that it was placing on them. You could think of the stressors relating to this, concern not only for your patients who you feel sometimes helpless to assist. Healthcare workers were also worried about their own safety, about getting sick themselves, getting their families sick when they come home, and then sort of managing all the things that we manage in life normally under this incredible new stressor. So even things like childcare, which could be disrupted, school, where you have to manage your children going to school, and all these stressors that were really affecting everybody. So you really saw early in the pandemic sort of the impact this was having. And it's continuing to have, and we'll get to this a little bit later, to the long-term effects of these stressors. And this is really what prompted us to come up with this idea of the Warrior Watch, with that name, which I think Zahi sort of is credited with coming up with a great name for this, based on the healthcare warrior who is sort of battling, obviously against COVID and to help their patients. And then the watch, which is based upon this idea, and I think it's really kind of a nice name. The watch based on not only the watch we're using in the study, but sort of watching over or trying to help our healthcare workers, through this. And that's sort of where the nidus of this idea came about for the Warrior Watch. And we'll talk about this too in a little bit about the two main aspects of it, which is looking at how we could evaluate the psychological well-being, the mental well-being of our healthcare workers who are under this tremendous strain, and also infection prediction. There's all this uncertainty about getting sick, and up to a 2-week incubation period where if you were infected, you might not know for a couple of weeks. All adds to this strain. So could we predict infections earlier on before waiting till symptoms develop, or that swab in the nose that could tell you if you have it? And that's been really the nidus for the development of this kind of study.
Yeah, so the name, is inspired, obviously, by the healthcare workers, but also inspired literally by our leadership. Obviously, Dean Charney not only being our leader during this pandemic, but also being a very well respected and expert in the aspect of resilience and fighting during difficult times, and not only fighting, but he would always tell me it's not a question of that kind of resilience but to rise above the occasion, right? That's what warriors do, right? They get things done, but they also rise above. So I was very much inspired by his work and his research, and really found an incredible collaboration here with Rob and the team. In a sense, it's a dream come true for me. As I mentioned to you, the aspect of dealing with wearables, data aggregation, as well as working in the aspect of stress and resilience.
Absolutely. So I guess really quick, I'm certainly excited. I want to get one of these things on my wrist and jump in and be part of this study as well. And I'm sure a lot of the people listening right now do as well. So who can sign up? Who's eligible? How do you do it? Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah.
So this gives So really, we're opening the study up to anyone in the Mount Sinai health system. So when we're kind of saying this idea of a healthcare warrior, it's really anybody who works in the health system, because everybody is playing such an important role and has played such an important role in sort of getting our patients through this crisis to the best that we can and getting all of us through the crisis. So it's open to anybody who is a Mount Sinai employee, who's a healthcare worker here, which we define very, very broadly. So our goal is to include as many people as possible across as many occupations and roles to better understand the effects of this pandemic on their psychological well-being, and then also to help us figure out, are we able to predict these infections earlier in people to get them the notification and the assistance that they might ultimately need with regards to that.
Very cool. So what do you guys expect would be the indicators that may help predict disease? How would that work?
Yeah. So good question and very important. So I have been looking, as I mentioned, at the aspect of stress on the body, but we've been using imaging methodologies, and we've been studying the immune system that you know very well, Jazz, about, and the cardiovascular system. But if you look at this field, there are certain variables that always seem to be important and have shown some indication to be predictive, which make a lot of sense. One of them is called heart rate variability. So heart rate variability has been associated with things such as external stressors. They change. And I can give you some anecdote about this in a second. So stress affects heart rate variability. Infection affects heart rate variability. Drinking alcohol affects heart rate variability. So actually, if I check now my HRV from last night, since I mentioned to you, I had a little celebration getting these old CDs and listening to them with my wife around the fire pit. But no, actually, I know a lot about heart rate variability because I do wear, these devices for training and exercise. A great measure of also seeing, how you recovered. Have you slept very well or not the next day? So Rob, go ahead. Why don't you mention your experience with this variable, since you've had that experience in patients?
Yeah, and so this heart rate variability, this idea, kind of to define it for people who are listening, it's really if you look at each of your heartbeats, in between each heartbeat, there's a small period of time between them, milliseconds, very quick. But if you calculate all the small differences between each heartbeat, that's your heart rate variability. That's the variability between each little beat. So it's not necessarily how fast your heart's beating, 60 or 70 beats a minute. It's these small milliseconds between each beat that we can calculate. And the really cool thing about this is from those calculations, you can determine how your autonomic nervous system is working. And that's the part of your nervous system that's the fight or flight response that kind of ramps up the body or calms it down. And it's really integral to kind of the workings of your body. And as Zahi mentioned, it really is affected by a number of things: stress, physical stress, psychological stress. So we've been really interested in that, as have a lot of researchers been, in saying, how can it give us insight into what's going on in the body? And in the area where I've been working mostly, which is an inflammatory bowel disease previously, which is this inflammation in your intestinal tract, we've shown now using wearables that these markers are associated with psychological stress and aspects of physical stress and immune function over time, and actually have a predictive ability where we're seeing changes in these markers that precede the development of symptoms in some way, in this case gastrointestinal symptoms, or inflammation in the body, which has been shown in other conditions as well, like infection, as Zahi was mentioning, and other things, showing that this is a really important kind of data point or marker in the body that you can pick up easily through a wearable device and can give you real insight into what's going on.
That's fantastic. Rob, while we have you, though, I think I think it'd be great to kind of pick on your doctor brain for a moment. Could you explain to myself and to others really what about COVID and inflammation leads to the gastrointestinal symptoms that some people are experiencing? Because in the beginning of the pandemic, it really didn't seem that there was a GI link. People who were having diarrhea or stomach pains, it didn't seem that was on the main listing of symptoms you should be looking out for. Everyone was watching out the lungs. So what's changed over the past few months? Why is that now something to be interested in?
Yeah, so I think initially it was like everything. When COVID first came out, it was all very new, and we were really grappling to kind of understand what the virus was, how it infects somebody, and what we've really seen is just the varied response that it can have on the body. And you think about this, depending on the study you're reading, up to 35% of people could be asymptomatic carriers, meaning they're not even going to develop symptoms. Other people, as we've clearly seen, are severely ill, going into the hospital, requiring intubation and help with breathing. And other people are just sick at home with fever and not feeling well. And that's been a challenge with COVID, is the real variation in the way that it can present. And at first, it was a little difficult recognizing which symptoms were associated with it. And as more and more has come out over the past several months, we've recognized that GI symptoms, gastrointestinal symptoms, actually can be quite common with COVID. And it could be varied symptoms, including diarrhea, abdominal discomfort, nausea, vomiting. All of these things can be impacted. And it's really a testament to COVID and its effects on the body as a whole, beyond just a respiratory virus per se, that we're really seeing impact in multiple body systems, which is one of the reasons why it's been such a dangerous virus.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So it might not just be the snacks. You also gotta kind of be cautious. If you're experiencing any kind of symptoms, any new changes in your body, play it safe these days. Really continue to do so. Very cool.
Yeah, I agree. You should, anything changes, you should let your doctor know, because it's so hard to say what is or is not COVID related. So you really want to be very cautious and safe for now.
Exactly. And I really think it's this predictive concept of the Warrior Watch project and the data that might come out of it, I really find to be fascinating and exciting, because right now when someone goes and gets tested, who knows if maybe on the way back from the testing center, you might have come into contact with someone on public transport or whatnot. It's so great when we're able to have a really small window and keep as many controls isolated as possible, as many variables possible when doing some kind of test. But with COVID, with people coming in and out, it's not always the case. So I think that kind of might showcase the brilliance and excitement about Warrior Watch, is that this could be a in the moment as you're living type predictor that, if not, could say, at someday, COVID or not, it could at least say, go check it out. Go speak with your doctor.
So Jazz, the hope, and I'm actually fairly optimistic that what we may be able to show that these variables that we're looking at, especially heart rate variability, could tell us about somebody having the disease before they really manifest itself being symptomatic. I really think we have a chance to potentially pick this up much before it is, maybe 3 days before, maybe a week before. So that's very important. But there's one other thing that we have not talked about. The Warrior Watch is not only a watch, but it's also an app on the phone.
Okay, tell us more about the app.
Absolutely. So we'll talk about it. And again, this is the strength of this Mount Sinai Informatics Center, having experience in using wearables, but also deploying apps on a phone to get information. So we worked with Rob and other colleagues who are experts in asking important questions about well-being, about COVID symptoms, self-reported, very quickly, takes 15 seconds, a bunch of questionnaire, not very long, but enough to collect the information that we have. So we are collecting self-reported symptoms, if you have any. Do you have a fever? Do you have a cough, etc.? What did you do? I mean, contact tracing is important, right? Or did you take the subway today or not? Did you take a bus to go to work? And how many people did you see? And how are you feeling? Rob will talk a little bit about the details about these questions, but these are very well, I would say, validated instruments to try to see how are you coping with the situation. And this is done on a daily basis. And there is, what's Rob? Is it every couple of weeks? There's another survey that we ask different questions to try to tease out the mental status and the coping.
Yeah, every week, right? Exactly.
So Rob, go ahead, take it from there. Maybe talk about the work you and Laura have done in this field. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been, as I was saying, it's kind of a digital platform that we came up with. And what that means is an app-based platform that links to your Apple Watch or an Apple Watch that we provide. So we're able to combine these questionnaires, survey questions every day that are very quick, so it's easy for people to do, as I was mentioning, the various variables we're capturing, and then link it in real time to the watch data. So we're able to get all these markers from the watch, your heart rate variability, your activity, your steps, your heart rate, things like that. So it allows us to have this really rich data set to look at of seeing how people are feeling, and psychologically, physically, with symptoms, and then also physiologically, how their nervous system is doing, their activity is, their heartbeat, all of these things. So it really gives us a really rich kind of overlap of information. And Lori Kiefer, who's a health psychologist here, who's a phenomenal health psychologist and researcher, particularly in gastroenterology, but in using these metrics, has also been instrumental in helping us kind of develop these survey questions and the questionnaires we're using to assess the psychological well-being of our healthcare workers over time, which has been incorporated as well into this app. And it kind of draws on what we've been doing in other wearable studies previously, again, before COVID, in gastroenterology. So it's really been, and this is a testament to the team, have been a really tremendous team that's come together from all aspects to make an app and a digital platform that can really answer some of these questions we feel that really need addressing.
That's really wonderful. And I just as a quick plug for our Zooming Towards Progress podcast, the way that kind of was started was that Zahi came out as the leader of BIMI very early on and said, he basically established these weekly meetings, these weekly Zoom calls with the entire institute, and said, I want to pose a space for you guys to speak about not only your challenges with work, but your personal challenges, how you're coping during this time, because the mental health aspect of this, I know that personally I will be permanently psychologically changed and altered, not necessarily negative or positive, but really changed by this experience. And I'm sure that everyone feels that way. And it's really going to kind of chart the course of how we're going to move forward as our individual little units and as society as a whole. So yeah, to focus in on the psychological aspects, because these frontline workers and everyone else involved in healthcare, and also all of the food service industry and everyone else, all of these businesses which are kind of essential and are what's keeping us going, what's allowing people to live in New York City, researchers to live in New York City, and doctors to be able to come and go to work, and for everyone else to just be able to have some resemblance of normalcy and get the essential things that they need. It's been an unbelievable psychological strain for everyone. So
COVID is here and will be gone, right? I mean, obviously we will win, against this. There will be ways to deal with it, to treat it, etc. Question of time. But I think the long-term sequelae, not only as you were just saying, on the body, right? There's definitely injury. We know that there's injury to the multi-organs, which is something that is going to have a long-term effect. We still don't know it. I mean, we have other work that we are pursuing to try to do observational studies to follow these patients over time. And Mount Sinai have created a COVID center to evaluate these patients who recovered. I am convinced that there is injury, myocardial injury, there's kidney injury, there's GI injury, there is, brain injury, etc. But there's also the aspect you were saying in Jazz. There is also long-term effect on the brain, on your mental aspect, and that's why again Sinai have created another center to look at and to study these patients and to treat these patients. So I really think that we have to be really deploy all the tools we have for this disease, not only to win it now in the short term, but to really understand its long-term effect and then to do something about it. And that's what I hope the Warrior Watch is going to be. Really, I mean, Rob and I are not only interested in the detection, but we are also interested in the treatment. And we have a study, right, that we are adding on to the Warrior Watch to deploy tools with an app so you're able to treat with feedback. I mean, you want to talk about this, Rob, a little bit? The extension of the study and the treatment aspect that we hope to deploy?
Yeah, one of the hopes of the Warrior Watch study, so not only to assess with questionnaires the psychological well-being of people, but to link it to physical aspects of that, so we can gain a real understanding of how it's impacting people's bodies beyond just perceptions of the stress and anxiety. And so we talked about how we're using heart rate variability, this measure of your nervous system function. And there's been really well looked at and validated means of biofeedback, of kind of either breathing exercises or other kind of therapy-based means to alter your heart rate variability. You can actually have an impact on your own body's heart rate variability, your own body's nervous system, which can have significant impacts on your stress and your ability to deal with adversity and things in your life. And as he was alluding to, where we're not only looking to study this in our healthcare workers to understand this, but then to hopefully intervene and say, are we able to actually improve the well-being of our healthcare workers and hopefully even beyond our healthcare workers, the general population, through kind of well-studied tools that have been evaluated in other conditions that focus on heart rate variability in sort of real time and during actual stressful situations. Yeah,
these are all tools that can be easily integrated in today's world because of the aspect of the easiness of wearables and the easiness of having a phone that you could do and deploy these instruments much better, quicker, faster, more efficient than what has been done in the past. So again, I talk about this inflection point, right? I mean, COVID is an inflection point. This whole world of telemedicine or telehealth is also at an inflection point and has been, and everything is being accelerated, to move it up to the forefront. And right away, having actionable things to do. I mean, we're interested in not only seeing things, understanding things, but we want to help. We want to be able to get these tools in the right hands. So again, we are at this cumulative aspect. The tide went low, but we haven't been swimming naked. So.
In fact, we've put on a lot more PPE.
Exactly. We're more covered now. Right?
More covered than ever. That's fantastic. Well, guys, I think that was a wealth of information. I think I'd love to wrap it up really quick. So if you are a healthcare worker, you're someone within the Mount Sinai hospital system, or if you're hearing this later on, maybe a few weeks down the road, and maybe this has been expanded out to people who are not just in the Mount Sinai health system, what are the concrete ways? How do we get involved? Who do we reach out to?
So if you're a Mount Sinai employee, and again, any kind of job within the Mount Sinai healthcare system, and you're interested in participating in the study and seeing if you would qualify, we have a study email address, actually. It's very easy to do. Just email our study's email address, and our coordinators would reach out to you, and it's really quite easy to get involved. And Jazz, I'm not sure if we can post that somewhere, the email address that people could reach out to. But yeah, so it's very easy to get involved. Any employee who's interested, just reach out to us, and it would be great to have you help us answer these really important questions.
Absolutely.
And to help our healthcare workers too.
So that definitely, Jad. I mean, the study had a pretty strong intake in terms of, since we started, we have over 200 plus people enrolled. There's a lot of good feedback we're getting from people in terms of the accessing, being able to be part of the study, but also adhering. Adherence is very important, and we've seen very high adherence. I think there is the aspect of wanting to help our healthcare workers, the warriors, they feel, that we are giving them, that somebody's caring also extra attention to like that. So yeah, we hope to expand this to 1,000, at least for now. This is where the funding we have for this. But my dream, and Rob, is to do the whole 35,000 Mount Sinai employees. We may need a slightly bigger budget than that. Maybe Warren Buffett. Will send us something our way.
If you're listening, Warren, please.
I mentioned him quite a bit here, so maybe he will.
Exactly.
No, we really hope to be able to touch more people with the study. So.
Yeah, and it'd be great to do even direct collaborations with Apple, because they've done in the new Watch OS that's coming out. They've even released a feature when the microphones hear the sound of running water, it'll bring up a sudsy screen that times out your length of washing your hands. So they're trying their hardest as well.
We are in discussion with Apple.
Great.
At least we cannot talk a lot about it.
Of course.
We have had support from Microsoft, so the data storage and the data aggregation and system, is with the help of Microsoft and a grant from them to run the safest system in the world with Azure, HIPAA compatible, and we feel very, very good to be in good hands with a system that really is the strongest in terms of patient safety or privacy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Privacy is really important in a study like this, and we take it really, really, really seriously, as does Mount Sinai.
Exactly. And as BIMI, as our institute, we are consistently working with visualized data. We're consistently working with patient data that's highly identifiable, and we do a fantastic job of adhering and making sure that everything is anonymized and stored properly and safely. So I'm glad that it's coming from within. I'm glad that it's coming from us and from Mount Sinai, because I think we're a good group to be leading the charge as a Mount Sinai team. Yeah. Great, guys. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for all of your contributions to, I guess, on behalf of society. No, but this really is absolutely fantastic to hear. Thank you guys very much. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you so much.
Totally.
Yeah.
See you guys soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.